Welcome again to the Thinc Conversation series, where we explore issues shaping South Africa. I'm Lucky Mathebula from the Thinc Foundation, which is based at the Da Vinci Institute and recorded at Business Day TV. I am in conversation with South Africans about how leadership can improve in our country. This is more than a conversation. It is a thought-provoking dialogue for a nation moving beyond transformation and transition. This edition focuses on the role of the Public Service Commission. The axiom for today is that without a committed, ethical, competent, and effective public service, there can be no civilization. Joining me to unpack more on this is Professor Somadoda Fikeni. Professor Fikeni, how are you, and welcome to the Thinc Conversation.
Thank you very much, Prof Mathebula. I'm fine, and thanks for inviting me.
Thank you, Prof. I have just dealt with an axiom here. Do you agree with this axiom that we have put just to start our conversation? Okay, there's an axiom that I have shared with you and the viewers, that a committed, ethical, and very meritorious public service is actually what nations in the world need to advance their civilizations and to be successful and great. What's your comment on that axiom?
Actually, that particular axiom is quite accurate, but it is even more than that.
Okay.
It's not just the advancement of the civilization. Public service, public administration is the largest service provider in most countries, if not in all. There is no other institution in place that is bigger than public service in providing such services. And also it is key to development, implementation of policy, public policy, development agenda for any given country, even in the interface with other countries. So to that extent, I do think that the public service is an engine that enables the state to do what it's supposed to do, and it impacts on the life, the livelihood of people, and it helps to advance the state itself among other nations to meet its own objectives.
Professor, being a chairperson of the continent's one of the continent's advanced economy, we should not shy away to say South Africa is one of the advanced economies in the continent, and therefore the expectations out of the public service should be very advanced. Would you take us about the role and origins of the Public Service Commission which you are leading? What actually is the role of the Public Service Commission?
Public Service Commission is a Chapter 10 institution which is responsible for oversight and accountability in the public sector. It is also responsible for the promotion of constitutional values and principles in the public service. It is an entity you go to when you have exhausted all the avenues within your department, whether in the province or nationally, when you have a grievance on your personnel management, whether it's a discipline or employment, promotion or leave management. And we are also an entity that is entrusted with advising on the organization of the public administration in South Africa. Where we originated from, we go back to 1912, just 1.5 years or 2 years after the formation of the Union of South Africa. This body was created to be responsible for the entire human resource development strategy and management of the public service. At that time, It was the one that was issuing regulations and policies for public service conduct as well as personnel practice. It was also the one that was issuing bursaries. It was the one that was doing the recruitment, performance management, and up to the management of employees during their career incidents. Everything was in the hands of the PSC. But after 1994, PSC has been restricted into an oversight, accountability, and a policy advice entity.
Professor, the concept of Public Service Commission is traced to be coming from when the nobility in the feudal world were commissioning people to come and work in the public service. So there would be rules that people would put, and then they commission people to come into the public service. Are we still commissioning people into the public service? And how do we deal with being commissioned in the public service and being deployed into the public service? Because this is a very interesting thing that South Africans have got to deal with, to say, who do you deploy, who do you commission?
Ideally, we still commission people or employ people into the public service as defined by the rules in the Constitution and various legislations such as your Public Service Act. And that in itself is supposed to manage the recruitment and sometimes the in-service training, the discipline management, talent identification, as well as the promotions and all other career incidents. But it is more than that. There is the issue of monitoring that there is service delivery and the mandate of each one of the departments. But post-1994, this is generally decentralized to departments as well, to provinces and various departments in those provinces. And it applies again to local government, though under different kinds of laws.
So we know that in South Africa there's been a very big debate, and the debate was about cadre development, something like that. And we know our constitution talks about getting people to come into the public service on the basis of policy considerations. And that is understood to be a justification. That is understood to be a justification that you can do that as the public service. So I just want you to clear us to say, what does commissioning and deployment into the public service, what are the differences between the two, so that we clear this thing once and for all?
What we have as provisions in our laws is that you get an open process of recruitment where everybody ought to apply and be appointed based on their competence, qualifications as stated up front and as required for the position concerned. But post-1994, there was a challenge of how to transform public administration with the liberation movements which had been excluded before coming to join the administration that was in place. That's when the issue of trying to bring in and deploy some of the people who were senior within the liberation struggle and associated with the party in power. But this particular process seemed to have evolved to a point where, when there were challenges within the ruling party, you started having the issue of patronage coming in, not just people appointed according to party affiliation alone in terms of deployment, because these processes were always parallel. You had the professional process of advertising and recruiting, whilst there was a parallel process within the then ruling party of having a deployment committee to say who would we support in order to support some of our objectives. But the new evolving policy space now has realized the challenges of that particular approach, hence the leaning towards a meritocratic system and a professionalized manner of appointment based on competence. And that would be well suited for coalition arrangements that you have, because loyalty should be to the administration and to the society itself, rather than to a party or party affiliation outside the competence that is needed. At the same time, you do have a recruitment into a private office, but that too is governed by laws. Even if a minister wants certain people as a chief of staff, there are certain minimum requirements and processes to allow for that.
This is very profound to hear from the chairman of the Public Service Committee to say, we are going back as a country to a state where men and women will be commissioned into the public service based on what they can contribute into the public service. This will be a meritocratic way of doing things. Professor, how does the Public Service Commission envisage that to be possible given the extreme politicization of the public service, especially in post-conflict or post-liberation democracies?
Well, the first important thing is that when we started experiencing challenges 10 years or more into our democracy, corruption, patronage, service delivery failures, and we even had commissions of inquiry such as the Zondo Commission and many other corruption investigations or service delivery failures, they demonstrated that the patronage or patrimonial system had failed dismally, because it was rewarding people and recruiting people according to loyalty rather than competence, and that in itself had led to many failures. Hence, in October 2022, Cabinet approved professionalization of public service framework, which is meant to clearly shift the paradigm towards a meritocratic appointment based on competence. And also we have other laws such as your Public Administration Management Act before Parliament now, which is meant to clearly delineate powers between the head of department or DG and the minister, the accounting authority and the accounting officer, so that again, there is no conflict in that particular space. Each one knows where their powers lie, and it limits the unlawful instruction or collusion of some sort. So this professionalization framework outlines mechanisms of recruitment, including PSC setting up a panel of experts that will be used each and every time
recording stopped.
DG or HOD is appointed.
Professor, I would come back to this thing of professionalization after the break. And we will be back with more on the Thinc Conversation.